Wow, not burning, but really, really heated. Things in LA, obviously not optimal after the governor of California held a news conference just a half hour ago. There's a lot of back and forth, I'm sure you know, between Washington and California. And now, get this, in about an hour, less 25 seconds, there will be a curfew in place. Our Alex Capriello has been watching everything on the ground in Los Angeles. Alex, I know this is a crime and justice show. It's very unusual that we would be covering, a story like this, but this is breaking. I just want you to take me to what you're seeing at this very moment as we're just a little less than an hour away from curfew.
Yeah, right now I'm outside a very sizable rally for peace, a faith-based worship, so to speak, where we got various congregants and religious leaders speaking to this very large group. I would estimate to be around 500 or so, maybe closer to 750, but a sizable amount of people that are still out, to your point, 1 hour from curfew that's scheduled to begin right here in downtown Los Angeles. It'll be interesting to see how quickly law enforcement actually sticks to it now that that announcement has been made, and exactly what that type of enforcement will look like. Obviously, I'm going to be staying right here in downtown LA until the very last second, until I'm actually kicked out, so I can see whether or not that means actual patrols, foot patrols, or horseback, like we saw earlier today. We also saw Los Angeles County Sheriff and California Highway Patrol, so it's unclear what kind of effort it'll be. But in 1 hour from now, all of these people are expected to leave downtown Los Angeles.
Yeah, I mean, here's the deal. It looks peaceful behind you. I can hear the speakers in the background. It sure doesn't look like, the George Floyd images, the riots, the burning, the graffiti, etc. But I want to remind our viewers it's 7 o'clock Pacific time. It's sunny and it's almost like afternoon. But anything can happen once the sun goes down, hence probably the curfew. But man, it is getting nastier by the minute, it seems. I think the latest thing that the governor said about the Trump administration is that it's an authoritarian regime and that the most important office holder is citizen. What's your feel? I mean, look, for what it's worth, it tends to be that reporters can get a sense of the agitation brewing and festering. Do you feel like things are on the mend, or do you think things are a bit of a powder keg right now as we approach curfew?
Well, what's interesting is what's happening right here behind me is not necessarily a good example of what we've seen over the last 4 days and 5 days, 4 nights. Just after night fell last night, right? That's when we saw that looting begin. We saw the vandalism and the violence and the agitations, which is part of the reason why Mayor Karen Bass is calling for this curfew. I think to a certain degree, listening to her earlier today, it was almost like enough is enough. She was praising the Los Angeles Police Department and the LA County Sheriff's Department, but also acknowledging at the same time, perhaps they could be doing more. They could be a little bit more aggressive. And for that reason, we saw more arrests actually earlier in the day today. Just outside that federal building, we saw law enforcement really swarm, push a bunch of protesters to a wall in which they encircled them. They sat them down, they put them in zip ties, and they began arresting them. Then later on the 101 eastbound, they actually made it onto the freeway, and that's when we saw California Highway Patrol come in and arrest 67 people. So very peaceful right now, but that's not without mass arrest that happened earlier today, Ashleigh.
Yeah, and also the numbers on the bottom of our screen right now may have something to do with that. 4,000 National Guard troops are now in the vicinity, and 700 Marines as well, who are going to be deployed apparently in LA tomorrow. Alex, do me a favor as we continue to watch what's going on. Just keep an ear out and then just break into programming if you see a sense of change. We want to keep our audience up to speed on what's happening. But I know that a lot of our audience tunes in for the true crime show, so we're going to do that. But promise me you'll break in, okay, Alex?
Yep. You know I will. Thanks.
Okay, Alex Capriello on a slight delay out there because he's moving fast and he's setting up locations each time something changes. I do promise you we will watch this. And if there is some development out there, I'll bring it to you. I'll break into all of our amazing programming that I have set up for you tonight. But I do want to deliver this to you because there's a lot going on from, maybe they're closing in on that guy in Washington State, the one who allegedly murdered his own 3 daughters and is a survivalist and an, ex-military man. I can tell you this. I nearly choked when I saw that a chopper went over a hiking area after some hikers saw somebody who didn't look like he belonged, and the guy took off. So I sensed that something could develop there, and we're watching that live at every moment. I'm going to bring you a segment on that manhunt, as well as a couple of other manhunts as well. But I have to start here because I swear I thought things were going to get so explosive in the Diddy trial today that there'd be like tears and explosions and, you know, a call for a mistrial over the way a witness was being cross-examined, because it's a really important witness. And I can say this, bending one's own preferences or goals or attitudes to find common ground with your husband or your wife or your partner or your lover, that is generally considered to be a sign of a healthy relationship. Think we can agree on that? But in the Diddy trial, it could be proof of racketeering and maybe even sex trafficking or both. A witness that's being identified only as Jane was back on the stand today, and no doubt she was bracing for the hell, you know, that we all expected, like this vigorous cross-examination that was going to put her through the paces, probing like the thin and the blurry line between free will and coercion. Jane was part of Diddy's life and vice versa. They were lovers for 3 years. And today, I don't know, this is hard. I was kind of stunned when she said it. She said she still loved Diddy. She loved him then and still loves him today, after everything we have heard that she's been through. But she said she did not understand going in what that love would cost her. She said that she broke her own boundaries with so-called hotel nights, right? That's the other term for freak-offs that we heard with Cassie, the other girlfriend who went through it, she said. Just to be the girlfriend that Diddy wanted. She said she didn't know what it was going to take and got in too deep too fast. Confronted with her own text messages and voice messages in which she said she didn't mind those hotel nights, freak-offs, Jane said that that was to keep Diddy from feeling rejected. The defense pointed out that Jane sometimes arranged those escorts and those like super kinky nights herself, to which Jane said, quote, "I knew there was an undertone, an expectation of me," end quote. And if it sounded like she was addicted to Sean Diddy Combs, it is entirely possible he may have been just as hooked on her. Because in a voicemail that jurors heard today, he called Jane, and I quote, again, these are his words, he called her the crack pipe, adding, quote, "That's my new name for you, crack pipe. Call you CP," end quote. Takes all kinds. Team Diddy also introduced texts between Jane and a woman identified only as KK. But if you've been following our coverage, that is presumably Diddy's former chief of staff, Christina Coram. Christina with a K, Coram with a K. The two talked about booking flights and arranging to carry drugs to Miami. I'll get back to that in a moment, because as I do the TikTok on what the law requires in racketeering, yeah, you know, you shouldn't be using your staff, if this is what happened, to be arranging drug deals. Jane testified that she also had a phone call with KK to coordinate that drug delivery. Again, if you're keeping score, this could be considered drug trafficking, and that is one of the predicate acts to racketeering. And the feds are now calling Christina Coram a, quote, co-conspirator, though for now she hasn't been charged. But ouch if you are her. Here's what I think is going on in the background. And again, this is me. I think she's been doing a lot of talking to the feds, trying to figure out with her attorneys, what do I do now? As in right effing now. Because if she's not getting immunity, because they said she's going to testify, she'll be charged with all the things that you're hearing the witnesses testify to. And I wouldn't want to take my chances. But speaking of drugs, Jane admitted that she chose ecstasy over cocaine and ketamine. She has an immunity deal too, Jane does. And when asked about her power to approve or reject certain sex workers, Jane said that sometimes she preferred the familiar ones to the unknown ones. Jane admitted that even now, Diddy pays her rent, a whopping $10,000 a month, and that he is still paying her legal fees, even though she stopped meeting with Diddy's lawyers. Right? Eventually she said, I don't think I'm being honest to the truth. I think these are her words. I'm not being honest to the truth. I'm you know, being loyal to him and not to the truth. So she stopped meeting with Diddy's lawyers, but he's still paying her legal bills. She said during their 3-year relationship, Diddy wired her $150,000 and invested $20,000 in her clothing line. Jane also admitted that she was jealous of the gifts that he was apparently buying for other women, you know, like expensive things like a Chanel bag. Diddy's lawyer asked about a bag that Jane was gifted. And here's what the lawyer asked. What is a Bottega bag? To which Jane fired back, I'm sure you have one. And then the lawyer asked how much such a bag costs. And Jane snapped back, how much does my body cost? So, you know, whoa, that's kind of fiery stuff. Jane testified that she enjoyed taking care of Diddy, including bathing him and massaging his feet, and that she did not want to judge his desires then and now, even though she says she wants to understand them. She said at one point she researched why he liked to watch her having sex with other men, and that she concluded he may have, quote, been bi-curious, that he was unwilling to satisfy such bi-curiosity directly. I'm paraphrasing, but these are her words under oath. My guest was in the courtroom for all of this. Armon Wiggins is a journalist and an author who moved to New York just to cover this trial, so that is commitment. He breaks this all down on his YouTube show and his podcast, The Armon Wiggins Show. Armon, I have said this before, I'll say it again. I think you have a really, really great insight that a lot of people are missing in this trial, which is why I'm going to ask you back early and often. So give me a little bit of a lowdown on Jane. Like, I feel like something really changed today.
Listen, today was explosive for me just because up until this point, I didn't know how to take Jane because I just felt like, okay, she was very emotionally charged through the prosecution testimony. But today we saw a different Jane. She was ready. She was ready for the defense. And to me, by far, she was the most poised, testimony that went against the defense in this trial. Like, to me, she showed credibility.
Okay, so here's what I want to ask you. Because when you don't have cameras in the courtroom and you're relegated to accepting these chalk drawings, it makes me crazy. Because there's so much that comes through in communication through nuance that you can't put on the printed page. And all the reporters are doing an amazing job. But it's not the same as your two eyes, because you're watching it, you're feeling it. I got the sense from reading a lot about this that Jane was this soft-spoken, very vulnerable witness and very believable, sobbing, gasping, like trying to get her breath, ugly crying on the stand, up until today, when suddenly she is mad AF and is showing a different side that maybe the jury will think, was I being played the last 3 days?
You know, I don't think that that's what that was. I think that she showed strength because the defense has had a reputation of breaking down every witness that's came up there until today. I think that she literally drove that cross today, and I think she did a great job. For me, it was one of those things that because the defense was trying to make it seem as though she had control over the freak-offs and she was in on that, I think that her job today was to say, hey, listen, I'm not going to hide from the fact that I love Diddy, that I'm still in love with Diddy, that I cared about him. I did care about him. I do care about him. He still pays my bills. I don't want to be here. I care about this guy. But let's be very clear here. I know that there's an undertone to the things that he asks me. So when you guys are reading these things off a piece of paper or you guys are reading these text messages, understand that I'm looking at these from a different lens. So when he tells me be explicit or when he tells me set it up, that's not just me setting it up because I want to. It's me setting it up because, listen, I'm dating a millionaire, a billionaire, a man with a lot of power. He's arrogant. He's narcissistic. He's controlling. And at the end of the day, I'm trying to have a good time. I love this guy, but if I tell him I don't want to do something, I know that the whole day is going to be ruined. The mood is going to be ruined. And then he might threaten to break up with me, which entails he's no longer going to pay this $10,000 rent. So you know what? Our whole relationship is based on this fantasy thing that we do. So when he starts saying, talk to me, lead me, I want you to show me what you got with it, that means engage. Let's talk about the freak offs. Let's talk about other men, because ultimately that's what you want to get to. Diddy had an affinity for other men and watching her have sex with other men, period. And she knew that. And the way to get close with him, to feed his ego, to give him what he wanted, and to keep the peace, she fed into it.
So, but here's the thing. There are a lot of relationships like that, right? Does it rise to the level of sex trafficking and racketeering is the issue for this jury. So to that, I ask you, and by the way, great insight, because I had a totally different lens having read it, so thank you for this. But what I want to know is, last week when you and I spoke, you got the sense, kind of like I did, that this was somebody who just wanted a really nice apartment and that she was going through with all these awful things to keep a really nice apartment. And to me, that's not sex trafficking. And you seem to have that same sense. Did you change your mind given what I thought was going to be a withering cross-examination today?
I did, because I feel like she controlled the whole testimony, because when the defense would try to, set up and say, well, you set these things up and you like the freak off. She said, no, I liked being with him. We did the freak offs because that was part of the culture. That is what we did. But let's be clear here. It's not just me setting this up. He asked me to take charge. This is why I did these things. I personally feel that Jane is more credible today, because she was very confident. She was poised in her delivery. She even got sassy. She fired back. And I think that she knows what she wanted. Listen, and she didn't shy away again from the fact that, yes, I liked him. I loved him. I would still be with him today, but at the end of the day, I didn't know that I was going to be introduced to this lifestyle. And so what they're trying to get him on is sex trafficking by fraud. And I think the fraud part is the materialized thing that he promised her. You're going to be my boyfriend. You're going to be my boyfriend. We're going to go on trips. I'm going to buy you nice things. Those things never happened and then when they did happen, she was met with a freak off.
Listen, you are great. It's so helpful to have your perspective and your eyes on, because like I said, perception can be so different when you're just trying to get it through like the spoken word. I'm going to go on my soapbox again, Armon. Cameras in the courtroom. It's just crazy not to have them. Will you come back again?
Yes. Let me tell you something. Thank you so much for keep having me on here. I'm having a great time, and you're such a great person. And shout out to everyone in your team. Thank you.
Right back at you, Armon Wiggins. Thank you for that. It's the Armon Wiggins Show. Check it out on YouTube. It's one of the best channels for coverage, along with mine. Thank you, Armon. I'll see you again soon. I now want to bring in defense attorney and former prosecutor Mark Eiglarsh. Okay, so you heard what Armon said. She owned the courtroom today. She got sassy. Gone was the soft-spoken witness who seemed so vulnerable. What are your thoughts about that?
That's normal. Listen, these are softball questions on direct examination. You can't really judge a witness until you're watching cross-examination. And then their true nature comes out. And either when I cross-examine a witness, they go down to Chinatown, right? You see the bias, the motive, the interest, the conflicts in their testimony. Or, like this rare witness, she stood up to the defense. I mean, these are not rookie lawyers. She stood up to them, and apparently, if you believe what Mr. Wiggins said, she came off believable and credible.
Yeah, so here's my question for you, and it all comes back to the law and what the jury is going to see in this witness when they apply the law, which is what they're supposed to do in deliberations. And I keep coming back to, she didn't want to lose her $10,000 a month apartment. God, I wish I had a $10,000 a month apartment. Will the jury see this as someone who just wanted luxury perks, or will the jury see this as someone whose livelihood, whose shelter, whose food was going to get cut off by a guy who was insisting on sex, i.e. sex trafficking?
Yeah, here's the answer. You ready? I don't know. Neither does anybody, because it hinges upon whether these jurors, each individual jurors, and then collectively when they deliberate, whether they find one C word versus the other. Consent or coercion. It's one or the other, right? And right, oh, there we go. And that's why Dawn Hughes, psychologist Dawn Hughes, was so critical to explain how somebody like Cassie or this witness or the other stays in a relationship when they don't want to be involved in these abhorrent acts. If jurors understand that psychology, then prosecutors have a chance.
I was so worried about the C word that we'd have an FCC violation, so thank you for keeping us clean. Last question, and it's only about a 20-second answer here because I'm running out.
Come on. Yes.
I had a feeling. I had a feeling. Okay, so then the big story that, he was allegedly beating her, breaking down doors, and there's evidence to that. Like, there's corroborative text messages, like, you need to pay for the broken down doors.
Yeah.
That changed things for me. That changed this to something more along the lines of Cassie's descriptions, which I was terrified. I was fearful, which brings me to the coercion. Do you think that that brings the case closer towards coercion and fear and maybe sex trafficking because there is that terror?
Yeah, it can be, absolutely. And more importantly, they continue to find reasons every day to hate this man. Normally, character evidence should not come in at all, but it's so intertwined with this case. Keep in mind, though, prosecutors have a tall order. They have to prove that this guy was the Al Capone of the lube world. It's not just that he's a bad guy. They've got to show these acts. So was it coercion? If it was, you've got sex trafficking potentially, along with the other drug crimes and the other things they're alleging. If those are proven, then they've got a shot.
If the lawyers on this case are watching, they are writing down Al Capone of the lube world as we speak. Mark Eiglarsh, thank you for being such a wordsmith, and thank you for being my guest tonight.
Always my pleasure. Great to see you.
My pleasure, let me tell you. Oh, my goodness. Okay, so, folks, if you have a hard time believing that women who were allegedly abused by Diddy still have feelings for him, our next story is going to make the top of your head pop right off. Remember Asa Ellerup, that ginger right there? That nice, lovely hair. Oh, gosh, I love it. That's the former Mrs. Rex Heuermann. And she is now on the record calling Rex, the alleged Gilgo serial killer, her hero. And she goes further, saying that she's still in love with him all over again. This is the same Rex Heuermann who allegedly built a sex dungeon in the basement of their home and is now charged with murdering 7 women. After the break, you're going to get a peek at a brand new documentary that takes us inside that Heuermann home and lets Asa speak her mind. And here's a spoiler. Not everybody in the Heuermann family feels the same way that Mom does. That's next. I do not know how many people think that Rex Heuermann is the Gilgo Beach murderer, but I'm guessing maybe millions, given the wall-to-wall news coverage. But this next one I did not see coming. For the first time, Heuermann's 28-year-old daughter, Victoria, says that everything that she's seen and heard over the past 2 years has convinced her that the allegations are true, that her father is indeed a serial killer. Needless to say, but I'll say it anyway, Heuermann has not been convicted of anything. And the only people whose opinions matter are the jurors. I mean, when you get right down to it. If, in fact, he even goes to trial, because that might not happen, right? But here's the really, really weird thing, and I can't stress the weird part enough. Rex Heuermann's ex-wife, that would be Victoria's mom, she believes the exact opposite of her daughter. Even though Asa Ellerup filed for divorce right after Rex's arrest almost 2 years ago, she says her wonderful ex is her, quote, hero, and certainly not capable of murdering and burying sex workers. She happens to be the central figure in a 3-part docuseries that just dropped. It happened just today, in fact, on Peacock. She says that seeing Rex in jail, charged with 7 murders so far, made her, quote, fall in love with him all over again, end quote. To which I say, what? Like the soundproof sex dungeon that police allegedly found in your basement? Not a red flag? What about Rex's alleged, quote, torture Bible, end quote, reminding him how hard to hit his victims and to get plenty of sleep before, quote, the hunt, end quote. What about the hooks hanging from the basement ceiling that he allegedly wrote needed some strengthening to make sure the victims could be suspended properly? Nothing? Like, no? The docuseries goes where not one of us has been before, and that is inside the Heuermann home, where Asa Ellerup speaks her mind. Take a look.
I watched the news. They were taking bags and bags of stuff out of the house.
One of the more unsettling pieces of evidence is a child-sized doll kept inside a glass case.
Are they testing the doll for DNA? My head, it's spinning.
Well, something was in here because it's not in here now.
The kids, they were crying themselves to sleep before we actually got into the house. I still feel Rex is here.
Oh, he's not. No, he's not there. He's still cooling his heels in a Long Island jail cell, awaiting trial, no bail. Trial still unspecified as for a date. Attorney John Ray joins me now. He represents the family of Shannon Gilbert, whose death and disappearance led to the discovery of the other Gilgo Beach murder victims. John, thanks for coming back on the show. What is your reaction first to Asa Ellerup's comments in this documentary that she's fallen in love with him all over again, seeing him in jail, accused with 7 murders?
You have to understand, I think, in looking at this entire series that was put out, that this is a posture. This is a show. And she's being paid a lot of money to put on a show. And she and her daughter are doing very well at that. This is all big. This is fake. And her statements are informed by this fakery. What I mean is this. If you listen throughout the entire 3-part series, one thing becomes very clear. Both of those women, no matter what, are actually setting it up to show that they have no involvement in these killings or in anything connected to these killings. Neither one of them has any involvement, John, if you listen to them. And John, that's what they're professing. So I don't trust a word you're saying.
It's weird to me. Okay, but what's weird to me is that if you don't want to have any involvement, and yet, you know, Asa Ellerup's hair was found in the tape on some of the victims, so the involvement is there. Why wouldn't she just disavow this man? She's divorced him, right? She divorced him like within, I think, months of this arrest. So why would she now profess this undying love and suggest that he's innocent? That makes her look maybe even more culpable, or possibly more culpable. And now she can be compelled to testify because she divorced him and doesn't have spousal immunity.
Well, you still, I think, maintain your spousal immunity during the time that you're married. So I don't think that she loses anything in that regard. But if you think about it, for her to actually pretend that she still loves him and so forth, well, maybe I should take that back and say maybe she does, but she loves him in a very sick context, a very dark context in which these people were living, in which they were operating. And it's undeniable, as you just pointed out certain undeniable things, it's undeniable that her daughter's hairs were found on 2 of the bodies, that her hairs were found on 2 of the bodies. And it's undeniable that each of them were living in that house throughout the time that Ray Tierney, the DA himself, had said, he was almost quoting me, that he had hundreds of prostitutes, hundreds, that were going through that house. Now, that's a 1,343 square foot house. It's a bungalow, or in essence. And you mean to tell me a married couple for 27 years doesn't know what's going on downstairs at all times?
Well, listen, it's been done. You know, lots of women have been cheated on before and didn't know a thing. So I won't pass judgment there. But yeah, I think it's just crazy to fall in love with someone all over again and you divorced him. I got to leave it there. John, will you come back again?
I certainly will.
John Ray joining us tonight. And by the way, that 3-part docuseries is called The Gilgo Beach Killer, House of Secrets. And it started streaming today on Peacock. And still ahead on this program tonight, is law enforcement closing in on Travis Decker? He's the man accused of suffocating his own 3 little girls before taking off into the woods in Washington state. There is news tonight. They spotted a man running from their sights on a hiking trail as the chopper passed overhead. We've got the details on that, plus an update on that missing New Orleans escapee who, as it turns out, was dating a fired jail employee. Do you suppose she's talking now that she's been arrested for helping him? That's next. After any jailbreak, 2 questions have to be answered ASAP. Where are they, and how the hell did they get out? The first question is almost always harder to answer. And in the case of Derek Groves and Antoine Massey, who escaped from the New Orleans City Jail 25 days ago, it is still a total mystery that where are they part. 8 other inmates who escaped from the facility at the same time were recaptured in fairly short order. But somehow these 2, they're still out there on the run, even though Massey posted a video on Instagram claiming his innocence, and the cops found the apartment where he shot that video. Massey was long gone. And as for how the men broke out, another piece of the puzzle may have just fallen into place. Yesterday, police arrested Derek Groves' on-again, off-again girlfriend. And get this, she is a former employee at the New Orleans jail. Dariana Burton was fired in 2023 for supposedly sneaking in contraband, which is a crime. Ms. Burton was arrested for that, but no formal charges were ever brought against her. Curious. Also very curious about this photograph. Like, is that a mugshot? Because if I ever get arrested, that's what I'm going to do. Police say that she and Derek Groves stayed in touch by texting and FaceTiming because he had a jail-issued iPad, and that the pair had, quote, intentionally vague conversations on May 14th that set the stage for what followed 2 days later, the day he escaped. The question tonight is whether Ms. Burton has decided to cooperate or whether she is content to merely switch places with her feller. And then there is the manhunt for Travis Decker. That's the one in Washington state. He's the former Army Ranger accused of suffocating his own 3 young daughters after picking them up from their moms for a scheduled 3-hour visit. That was a week and a half ago, and no one has been able to find him since those girls were murdered. Investigators say they've narrowed the search down to Ingalls Creek area, west of the town of Wenatchee. Sheriff's Department now says a tip came in from some hikers who spotted a lone hiker who seemed to be very ill-prepared for the trail given the kind of weather conditions. And they also say that he appeared to be avoiding people. So when the tracking teams spotted that guy, guess what happened? That guy ran from sight as the helicopter passed over him. So the canines have now been deployed, and the locals are being told to lock their doors and stay alert while the police comb those woods. So stay tuned, because we think breaking news could happen at any time on this. I want to bring in someone who knows everything about a manhunt like this. Chris Swecker is a retired assistant director of the FBI. He formerly led the Criminal Investigations Division, and he was part of the manhunt for the Olympic Park bomber Eric Rudolph. And I don't need to remind people, Chris, about your work. It went on for 5 years looking for Eric Rudolph, who was in the wilderness, so to speak. So what do you think about the description that I just gave about Travis Decker and the chopper that went over and watched this hiker guy take off from view?
Yeah, actually, it sounds to me like his capture is imminent. I mean, he's been spotted. You know, you can now form a sort of a perimeter around that area, although it's quite remote. If you research the Ingalls Creek area, it is extremely, I think the nearest town is 15 miles away. But there are cabins in that area. If you look at cabins for rent and that sort of thing, there are structures, some that may be occupied, others not. It's an old gold mining area as well, so there may be some caves that he can hide in. So, I mean, it's not going to happen tonight. Obviously, they're not going to close in on him after dark. I think they'll wait till the morning and try to tighten that perimeter up little by little as the day goes on. And, you know, he's on foot. He doesn't seem to have much support. He left a lot of supplies in his car. So it sounds like this was kind of a spontaneous thing. You know, he just kind of headed up into the mountains without a plan.
Yeah. I feel like this is like the tracker's worst nightmare, that you get a former Army Ranger who's got, you know, more survival skills than the best of them. Does that inform how the marshals and the trackers go after him? Like, have you got to have a special division to go after a guy like this?
Yes, I mean, they have gone to the marshals and the Border Patrol to not only relieve the locals, because they're exhausted. They've been at this for quite a while without much relief. So they brought in the marshals and the Border Patrol, but the Border Patrol especially has some unique capabilities. You know, they can go on horseback. They have the canines. They're very, you know, they are sort of some of the better federal agencies on the ground, you know, rough terrain manhunt type of activity. So, you know, they're out there. Again, I mean, he's been spotted. There's a perimeter set up around, you know, maybe a mile going in each direction. And I think very slowly they'll tighten down that perimeter tomorrow. The precautions you have to take is you have to assume he's armed and he is desperate and he's obviously mentally disturbed. So he's, you know, if he is armed, he's likely to shoot it out. He'll see them, the searchers, before they will see him. So they have to be very deliberate, very measured, and very disciplined in how they close that perimeter.
That gives me the willies, just what you said, that he'll see them before they see him, despite the fact that the chopper may have seen him. It's awfully strange for a hiker who's ill-prepared for the conditions, is avoiding the other hikers, and runs from a helicopter. It would be strange to know that it's somebody else other than him. So we're going to watch that as breaking news. I don't want to let you go, though, before I ask you about Derek Groves. I was floored when I found out that he had an on-again, off-again girlfriend who worked for the sheriff's department and got fired for bringing in contraband, and had these conversations with him on the iPad just 2 days before he went missing. Shouldn't this have been like a red flag? Like, why was she even allowed to communicate with an inmate?
Yeah, it's baffling. I mean, a jail-issued iPad? I've never heard of that. Yeah, I'm familiar with county lockups, county jails, but I've never ever seen that before. What I do know, though, is that these county jails and county lockups, you know, the inmate population comes from the same geographical area, the same neighborhoods as the employees of the prisons. So there's a lot of interrelationships there. So it's not surprising that there's there might be cousins, relatives, girlfriends, boyfriends, what have you, you know, that are, you know, smuggling contraband into the prison, whatever other, you know, weapons, for example, and helping them escape. In this case, not surprising at all.
I keep coming back to that mugshot of Dariana Burton, and I'm just wondering, what the hell is she smiling about? You tell me. Isn't that the kind of person that you are immediately putting into a squeeze play? Meaning, Ms. Burton, you may be smiling now, but here are the charges you're facing if you're convicted of aiding and abetting this guy. You got nothing to smile about. Is this how you try to track down where that inmate is, by basically throwing the book at her?
Well, yeah, and you know, just tracking the social network of each individual and who they have contacted historically, who they contacted while they were in prison, their family network, their friend network, if you will, their interrelationships, and you know, you sort of narrow that down to who could possibly support them outside once they're on the outside, and you know, in this case, you know, I think they've arrested over a dozen people that have assisted in one way or another. So, you know, the gumshoe work continues. I have no doubt that both of these people are going to get caught. It's just going to take a little bit more time.
Yeah, I'm going to call you if there's any news on Travis Decker. It's good to see you again, Chris. Thanks for this.
Thank you. You too, Ashley. Take care.
All right, you too. I'll see you soon. Coming up, bomb threats are stupid, right? Full stop. No exceptions. And lucky for us, some of the people who make them are stupid too. Case in point, a plane load of people in Michigan who are none too pleased with this week's dumbest criminal. I'm going to tell you all about it next. Nobody has to tell me how annoying it can be to miss a flight, but you know what's more annoying? Facing a possible prison term for calling in a bomb threat to an airline. Police say when John Charles Robinson showed up a few minutes late for his Spirit Airlines flight to LA last week. He made a really, really dumb decision that if he wasn't taking that flight out of Detroit, nobody would be. According to the U.S. attorney, after arguing with the gate agent, Robinson called in a bomb threat from his own phone. The flight was immediately canceled. Passengers and crew were taken off the plane, and bomb-sniffing dogs were called in. And here is the best part of the story. When Robinson returned to the Detroit airport hours later for his alternate flight, he missed that one too, because the feds were waiting for him. One word, don't. I have an update for you. I want to take you out to Los Angeles for some live pictures out there, because we've been watching things. It's not really aggressive in nature right now, but I just wanted you to see some live pictures, because the National Guard and DHS officers are now blocking the entrance to the federal building out there. The crowd is still peaceful, but it's gone past like 1,000 people, which is always nerve-wracking, right, if you're the guys in the SWAT uniforms and the crowd control uniforms. Also, some of them are marching towards the 101 freeway. If you know Los Angeles, that's like a critical artery. But so far, it's peaceful, like I said, although some cars have been seen like spinning out and doing donuts in a nearby intersection. So that's also just cause for some concern. But like, there you go. I just wanted you to see things are still fairly quiet. The officers are in the street and poised. But again, it is still light out. So yeah, we're going to keep an eye. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our News Nation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.